Hey everyone, this is Will from Beijing, China, and Happy Chinese New Year, and welcome to this brand new and exciting episode of The Missing Piece. Regrouping of separatist groups, the volatile situation in the neighboring Afghanistan, and foreign support are key factors behind a new flare-up of violence in Pakistan, southern western province, according to the local political and security issues. Terrorism has reared its head in the mineral-rich province as dozens of security personnel and suspected militants have been killed in ambushes, clashes, and bomb blasts across the region in recent months. And one thing that we should know, that this key region actually connects China's strategically important northern western. It also includes a 64 billion CPEC project with Pakistan. When we come to think about terrorism, and we normally think about that most of the cases could happen in the Western or in the European countries. But this time, Pakistan surely took the lead with the recent cases. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to invite our good old friend, Kahoot, and welcome back to the show. And again, he's going to help us to understand all the details. And with that said, we're going to get to more questions regarding the CPEC project and the relationship between China and Pakistan in this year, and so many more. Kahoot, my brother, welcome back to The Missing Piece.
Thank you very much. First of all, happy Chinese New Year, my friend Mr. Will, and it's always a pleasure to be in your show.
Thank you, my brother. Happy Chinese New Year to you too. Now, again, before we mentioned regarding this terrorist attack, I want to bring something more positive as our intro. As you and I, we started talking at the beginning, that this week, one of the exciting events took place in China is the Winter Olympics. Now, we know that the Chinese leader Xi Jinping that invited so many international leaders participated this opening ceremony, and of course, the leader of Pakistan also showed up. So my first question to you is, how significant is this?
Well, this was a very significant event, and as our Prime Minister also said that in all his life, this was his first participation in any Olympic ceremony. And it was a very huge, like you can say, diplomatic event as far as the Pakistan-China friendship is concerned. Last time in Beijing Olympics 2008, our then Prime Minister, Mr. Yusuf Gilani, was also physically present here in the Beijing. And again in 2022, our Prime Minister was here. So I must say that in these critical times, especially when the pandemic is not totally over, and when there are some diplomatic strifes between China, US, Australia, Canada, in all these scenarios, keeping all these recent diplomatic events in the hindsight, I must say that this participation of our Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan, in this opening ceremony of the Beijing Olympics 2022, I think it's very historical, and it's very, we must say, timely.
Kahoot, I want to say, one of the interesting things that a couple days ago, as soon as, the Winter Olympics, the spirit of Olympics started to get picked up, a lot of my friends asked me the same question. It would say, hey, Will, did you get a chance to watch the Olympic, or are you following any of the ongoing competitions? If I can be honest with you, as much as I enjoy the sports, but I have to admit, today, international communities, especially the negativity coming from the Western Hemisphere, they are treating this Olympic as not as an international sports event, but as a political soundbite. which is really frustrating for any of the sports enthusiasts or sports fans to really to understand the reasons behind it. So that's why I would say you've been in this international relationship for so long, and you are one of the lead research on this economic, projects, regarding between China and Pakistan. So my question to you is, why do you think that today that anything going on in China or anything related to China seems so positive, seems so transformational, but meanwhile it's so political? Is it really necessary for us to see this Olympic as a political way to deal with China?
Yeah, I agree to you to some extent that today, whatsoever thing is coming from China, these Western countries, I mean, they are looking on it, with quite skepticism. So there are two things. One, there's a sports, Olympics, the biggest events, the sports event of this world, So this Olympic thing, it is not a Chinese thing. I mean, come on. So these Olympics, they happen in different countries, periodically. So we all know that they originated from then Greece, the Athens, from old times. And but the basic spirit of these games, that is that, as now the tagline of the Beijing Olympics is, the sports or the games for the shared future. So I mean, these sports are actually they are the events which are supposed to bring the nations closer. That's diplomatically, right. On all the friends, and they are actually meant to be the engine of friendship between different hostile nations. But it's very unfortunate that very recently we have seen that some countries have wrongfully connected these sports with, you can say, some politics and some hateful things, which is very, I must say, unfortunate. So, but again, we should always keep an eye that, more than 25 global leaders were also present in the Beijing, including the mighty Russia.
That's right.
Pakistan, the Central Asian countries, even so many countries, their heads of states were present, like physically present at Beijing, which is a very big thing, And, who won how many gold medals, that is the secondary thing,
That's right.
Just the participation, because from Pakistan in this Winter Olympics, there was only one player, right? There was only one Olympian, because the winter sports are not so much common in Pakistan, because we don't have so much harsh winters or, these sort of things. But gradually, the spirit of these Olympics, even the Winter Olympics, are being awakening in Pakistan as well. So hopefully things will further, improve. But coming back to your query, that these hostilities are not against actually the sports. They are against the China. We all know this. This is an open fact.
That's right.
We all know that today the China is the global economic superpower. But at the same time, we all know that it has this policy of non-intervention. So that's why, it is not the number one military might power of this world, but at the same time, it is leading on the economic front. And, we can talk about it later, but as the China is growing more and more on the economic front, it is sharing its prosperity in the form of this Belt and Road Initiative. And we are all seeing that, these things are happening. And as a proof, you see that, as I mentioned earlier, that more than 2 dozens of the global leaders were present, and they I must say, announced their solidarity with China in these Olympics. Yeah.
Before we move on to our next topic, for this session, I do have one more question I want to ask you, my brother. When you are watching the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympic, what were some of the thoughts running through your head? So in other words, how did you feel that when you were watching this magnificent and one and only the opening ceremonies, again, probably, I don't want to say it's better than what we saw in 2008, But given this condition, given the circumstances, but this time, I would say probably it's even much more mesmerizing or even more entertaining than what we saw in 2008. So again, going back to the question to you is, what were some of your thoughts and how did you feel?
Yeah, because I couldn't physically travel there due to the pandemic travel restriction, even though I'm physically present in China, just three and a half hour fast train journey from Beijing. I'm sitting in Jinan. So I couldn't travel. But, I followed it, very passionately on the digital media platform. So, it was actually a matter of great pride, a matter of great hope and very happiness, because my prime minister was there, he was there. And when Pakistani contingent it entered in the stadium, the Chinese crowd, it cheered, it cheered just like they cheered for their own crowd. So I felt so happy. It gave me actually goosebumps, actually. So, all the lightings and all the, the arrangements, especially in these tough times of COVID, since I couldn't travel back to my home since 4 years. So I was feeling homesickness also. But, witnessing this opening ceremony, actually, I felt so happy, very, passionately I followed it. And I witnessed that, very systematically in a disciplined manner, taking all safe and precautionary measures. The conduct of this opening ceremony, actually, it gave me a lot of, hope. Actually, hope in the humanity in the long run that yes, we have passed through these tough times of COVID-19, and now we are moving towards better times. And what is the more better tool for the sustainable peace than the Olympics or the sports, where virtually all the world and their key players are there at one spot, and the flag, under the Olympics flag, and under the Beijing Olympics flag, the motto of which Olympics is the sports for the shared future. Yeah. So it was very
Brother, I am very touched by what you said, by using the word called hope in humanity, or the sustainable, meaningful partnership. But let's get to our next topic. Brother, as I share in the intro, that, when we think about the word terrorism, normally that wouldn't pick Pakistan will be the country linked to that word. But what happened recently in Pakistan, and again, there could be many reasons behind it, and that's why I want you to dive deeper and help us to understand. Now, if I can be honest with you, number one, some people say, or some international community experts believe that India, it's one of the reasons why recent terrorist attacks happened in Pakistan. On the other hand, Pakistan was being accused of supporting what happened in Afghanistan, which is taken over by Taliban. What I just said in a few moments ago, that was a lot of information for us to understand and for us to digest. So let's go back to the foundation. Can you help us to understand what is happening today in Pakistan when we think about the word terrorists?
Pakistan has been the frontline ally of the U.S. in the so-called war against terror, which actually started in the post 9/11, which was the September 11th, 2001,
right.
The notorious terrorist attack on the World Trade Center in the New York, United States. So after that, when the U.S. bombed Afghanistan, so Pakistan supported the U.S. and the NATO forces in all letter and spirit. We were the frontline, as I said earlier, in this war on terror. So as a repercussion, Pakistan has paid a huge price, be it the human price, be it in terms of dollars or the monetary cost or the human cost or the infrastructure cost. So Pakistan has paid a huge price, more than 70,000 civilians and military lives. The sacrifice is huge. So, first of all, this is the historical fact which nobody actually can refuse. But very recently, we have seen that despite having so much, arms and ammunition and the support of nearly 50 countries in this NATO alliance, which is North Atlantic Treaty Organization, all of these like European countries and the Western countries, like most of them were in this alliance. But despite of this huge military power, they couldn't conquer Afghanistan. They couldn't conquer the few thousands. The Taliban, So eventually they had to go back. So when they went back again, so then again, Pakistan being the very close neighbor of Afghanistan and the host of millions of the Afghan refugees, So we are again facing the direct repercussion of that U.S. sudden pullout, I must say, from the Kabul, which to this date the international relations experts or the war experts has failed to understand.
That's right.
That so-called military superpower, self-claimed so-called military superpower of the world, it had to pull out its forces, within the matter of a week. So again, Pakistan is embracing the impact, and specifically in these times when there are so many, evil forces like Daesh, which you say IS, the Islamic State militants are also there. And then, of course, there has always been the hostility between Pakistan and India. So whatever bad thing happens in Pakistan, it has been a ritual that India has blamed. And unfortunately, in the past, the Pakistani military official has irrefutable proof in the form of Kulbhushan Yadav, the Indian serving military official who was caught from the neighboring Iran, and he later claimed the responsibility of the terrorist attack in Pakistan. So in this context, the claims of our interior minister that India is behind it, so we cannot ignore it. But again, I've given you the historical evidence that Pakistan has always been in the front line in this war against terror, and we are again embracing this recent wave of terrorism, which I hope that our security forces, with the help of our very cooperating neighbors like China and even Afghanistan, because now the present government in Afghanistan, which is not so functional actually,
right?
But we have seen, considerable decrease in the number of terrorist attacks. Actually,
But brother, I want to say, based on what you just said and based on what you just described, and we know that India today, it's actually playing a very dangerous game, if I can put it this way. Because on one hand, India clearly understands that China and Pakistan has this irreplaceable relationship. But meanwhile, the foreign policy side from the United States of America has not shown any positive initiation internationally. Given the condition domestically, it's a chaos, it's a mess at this moment. So that's what I'm saying. If Indian is smart enough, we always say, pick your battle wisely. And if I can use a biblical reference, we will say David versus Goliath. If Indians see himself as the David, but I do want to remind India and remind our viewers that this is a very, very different scenario in the 2022, because this time David might not just be a dumb figure. Actually, it's going to be a lot more difficult to be overcome. Don't you think?
Exactly. Yeah, I perfectly agree with that, because now we are living in this world. This world is very different than the late 20th century, I must say. Things have been changed with so much pace. Now you cannot just keep on waging a proxy war on one country and sit, and show your better picture at the UN and, do the lobbying in some big countries like China and
That's
Russia
right.
and the US, and at the same time, you cannot play the victim card always.
Right.
So we are living in this world, which is very globally integrated right now, and without mutual cooperation, even between the neighboring states, things cannot function well. Just to give you an example, because now there is a total chaos in Afghanistan. We all know their banks account, their foreign assets have been freezed by the U.S., which claim to be very, well-wisher of the Afghan people, but it has not yet released the banking assets and the financial assets, which is worth $9.5 billion of the Afghan government. So from the economic side, the Afghan government is totally, we can see that it is suffering paralysis, right? But at the same time, Pakistan has sent some aid, medical aid, and the food supplies to the Afghan people. China has sent, the vaccines and other aid to the Afghan people. China has actually started the trade with the Afghan people so that Afghan government can be facilitated. At the same time, not to take credit from India, which has also sent some food supplies to Afghanistan, to Pakistan, because India doesn't have the direct land link with the Afghanistan. So Pakistan allowed India to use its territory so that the situation of Afghanistan can be improved. So you see the example that one country, Afghanistan, which is in chaos due to the United States and the NATO forces, the 20 years worst, this so-called war against terror, which has further pushed Afghanistan into chaos. But at the same time, who is helping Afghanistan? Number one, China. Number two, Pakistan. And not to take credit from, as I said earlier, also India, which is a good thing. So, in this world, especially in the post-pandemic world, we have seen that, China has provided these vaccines all the world over under global alliance on vaccination. So this is, in this present world, what I understand, Mr. Will, that only one way through which the nations can move forward, and that one way is cooperation.
That's right. Now, brother, my next question is, again, it sounds so strange. Is this supposed to be, let's just say, an ongoing debate between Pakistan and India, or Afghanistan and Pakistan, but how did China get looped into this terrorism-related issues? Because brother, as much as I do, China has a very, I want to use the word concrete or strategic foreign policies in terms of dealing with allies and dealing with partners. But one thing that we all know, that China has never meddled any foreign policies, especially in any other countries, because we believe that's supposed to be domestic issues, not an international concern. But somehow, because of this economic interest, or because of this economic partnership between China and Pakistan, China right now is somehow got looped into this. Can you help us to understand what role does China play related to fighting against the global terrorism, or fighting against this global terrorist threats?
Yeah, China, this policy of China, which is based on the total, intervention into the domestic affairs.
That's right.
Of friendly countries. I think this policy is very commendable because we see that in the recent past, all these bad things which happened in the world, the basic reason was the unnecessarily intervention by these imperial forces, in the least developed countries like Pakistan, or just like this, or also in the Africa. Specifically, we see that in this 20 years prolonged this war against terror, this war was being fought in the neighborhood of China, but there was not even one incident. When we see that China, yet alone, fight in this, but yet alone taking any, part in this war, just by the words. No, it just China just minded its own affair, and things were very good. So as a result, today we see that China has become a very great economic mighty power, and the companies starting from Apple to Samsung to IBM, all these big MNCs. They have their assemblies here in China. They are using, so they are totally dependent on Chinese labor force. So yeah, this is the victory. This is the fruit. The seeds of these fruits were actually sown. I must say, half a century before, when then Chinese government then Chinese visionary leaders they decided that, look, we are not going to meddle into, or we are not going to poke our nose in someone else's affair, and just mind our own business. And today we see that in not even one activity, not even one terrorist activity around the globe, nobody can put finger on the China because everyone knows that China means its own business.
Brother, I got two more questions before letting you go. Let's talk about in this upcoming year. We know that many nations are going to face elections, and these upcoming elections could actually change a lot more scenarios or a lot more international influence by the results. For example, India is going to face a major election, but by now we know that the current leader, Narendra Modi, he has lost his base, not only because the mishandling of the pandemic, but also among the younger generations, people no longer see Modi as this icon that really kept the words of the promises or really try to change India in a more westernized way. So I want to ask you briefly, from your perspective, how impeccable could be this election happen in India, and how do you think that this upcoming election in India is going to change the relationship between Pakistan and India, or the India and China?
Yeah, this 2022 is going to be the global election year, starting from Brazil to India, and so many countries. The elections are going to be held, which will actually shape the global politics in the years to come. As you asked me about the India, yeah, it's a huge country, about 1.3 or 1.4 billion people, and there's a great amount of Indian diaspora, which is everywhere. We must admit, the CEOs of being the Twitter, Google CEO, the big company CEO, they are mostly Indians.
That's right.
Which is a good thing. But the leadership, the most unfortunate thing which happens to India in the recent past is the Prime Minister Modi, actually. So, unfortunately, because his party is tilted towards right wing, and it is considered as the right wing political party of India, but sadly it has some relationships with the militant groups in the India. And this state, when I'm speaking with you, there's a movement which is running against the Muslims, and they are saying that the Muslims cannot follow their religious clothing rights, which they believe is religious, which the militant forces in India claim that they cannot wear it because it's a Hindu majority country. So everyone should wear like what the Hindu or religion people wear, which is actually very, very unfortunate, because in this civilized world, as even in China, we see that religion has nothing to do with the politics, and everyone is free. Everyone is free. So things are, not good in India. So specifically, if we talk about like Pakistan and India thing, it's a basic issue which is the bone of contention between these two countries, is the issue of Kashmir, which is actually unsettled.
That's right.
So Pakistan believes that the part of Kashmir which the India actually governs is Pakistan called as Indian occupied Kashmir, and the part of Kashmir which is actually with Pakistan, but it is semi-autonomous. It has its own president and prime minister, but India claims that it is the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So things are very fishy. So in this hostile environment, again, President Modi, he has not acted like the prime minister of 1.3 billion people. He just flamed these waves of militancy in India, this hatred against non-Hindu groups, and be it Muslims, be it Christians, be it Maoists, be it, Tamils, which is very unfortunate. So talking about these, global elections, actually, so this is very crucial moment in the global politics because India, South Korea, France, and Brazil,
That's right.
Philippines, Australia, Colombia, and Kenya, all of these countries, even the US, they are going to witness their elections. Lastly, the last election this year will be in the United States. I think in the November 2022, if I'm not wrong. So these elections will shape the course of global politics, especially in the post-pandemic world. So let's hope that the newly elected global leadership, they will act responsibly. They will go towards the resolution of conflict instead of flaming the already existent conflicts and disputes, as I discussed in the case of India and also in the case of the US. And I hope that the coming leadership of these two great countries, because I believe that, the leadership doesn't define a nation. A nation is built up by its own people.
That's right. Brother, I always say, again, as I mentioned many, many times, we would say not only that we appreciate the distinguished scholars and guests and panels like you who are living in China, really witnessing that in the past few years, and of course the future, the upcoming years, how China is going to be changed or going to be shaped, not only by the Chinese nationals, but also by the talents within the international communities. So that's why it's so encouraging, it's so uplifting that to hear such a positive and encouraging message from people like you. Now, I'm sure that during the Chinese New Year season, even though that we might not be able to travel as much as that we would like to, but I always say in good faith that this pandemic is going to be totally taken care of. And so one day, I love to see you, sir, in Beijing, China, and we're going to have a live podcast all together, continue our conversation between China and Pakistan. So Kahoot, thank you so much for your time. And I really, again, every time, not just this time, every time I enjoy the conversation with you, sir.